Today's guest is one of Wales's true musical originals, a songwriter, composer, broadcaster and storyteller whose career has taken him from the BBC Radio 1 to Abbey Road, from chart songs to iconic TV themes, from sold-out theatres to unforgettable late-night television. He was the youngest ever guest on The John Peel Show, one of the first artists signed to Elton John's Rocket record company, has written, performed and collaborated with some of the biggest names in music and entertainment. In the 90s, he hosted The Mal Pope Show, with guests including the Bee Gees, Lulu and John Cale, winning a Welsh BAFTA in 1995, followed by late-night music chat show Heaven Sound, which won a New York Film and Television Award in 2001. His latest work, released in Feb 26, coincides with Series 2 of No Straight Lines. Moving On is a piano-led ballad, tinged with sadness, but underpinned by defiance and hope. It's about refusing to be defined by the past, choosing the future instead. I'm Lawrence Windmill. This is No Straight Lines, because real success is never a straight line. A mercurial talent whose influence has inspired generations, please welcome the one and only and truly inspirational Mr. Mal Pope. Mal, it's a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us on No Straight Lines today. It's great to see you. It's been a while. How are things in sunny Swansea?
Good. Always good to have a chat, Lawrence. If it's, a cup of coffee and mumbles or it's bumping each other on the street, yeah, always good to catch up.
Well, it's certainly not ice cream weather today, but maybe as spring is around the corner, we'll have to meet for another ice cream soon on the promenade.
Yeah, no, it's. We're blessed to live in this part of the world, and I don't take it for granted. What I do always think is, because I've been also blessed to travel, it makes me appreciate this part of the world so much more. Every time I come back, I think, I'm home.
I know, Mal, and Swansea's in your DNA and running through your veins. But listen, I want to go back to the very beginning and take you, my God, you've done so much stuff. And take you back to the chapel and the John Peel Show. But just before that, today's a big day because for your ever-changing journey and you're forever creating, today's momentous in many respects because you've got a new record out today, haven't you?
Yeah, a new record. And it's interesting, because in the old days you had to, with the technology we had, we'll talk about my early days recording, but, when I first got into recording, there wasn't a recording studio in Swansea, really. I recorded my dad's tape recorder. So, now I'm in my garden shed. This is my studio, my podcast studio, my recording studio. You can make a record and you can put a record out. Really pretty quickly. In the old days, you'd have to mix it, send it off, get it back from the vinyl printers and all of that. So, new record. I'm trying to release one sort of fairly regularly, another one every so often. It keeps me on my toes and it keeps on building this momentum. You have to be part of the algorithm these days, Lawrence, if you want your records to become an algorithm.
So tell us, moving on, why? The lyrics on that, they're quite, it's a sad song, isn't it, really? Brief insight into the story, Mal.
Well, Bob Dylan was once asked what a song was about, and he said, it's about 3 minutes. So this song is about whatever you want it to be about. But basically, there is, some things you think are going to last forever, and sometimes they don't. And it's really hard because you keep fighting, you keep on thinking, this is going to get better, that's going to get better. And it doesn't. You have to come to a point where you say, actually, this isn't working. Whatever it is, whether it's a relationship or, working, whatever it is, and it's time to actually move on. You can't look back. You just have to say, okay, it's not working anymore. Let's move on.
Well, I'm delighted that you've picked the launch date of this song to coincide with the bloody launch of Series 2 of No Straight Lines.
Fantastic. Well, it's a joy. It's a joy.
So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to Bryn Hyfryd.
A few years. You're being very kind saying a few years. Let's go back half a century.
So it all started in that chapel, didn't it?
Yeah, so I was brought up in Swansea, a place called Bryn Hyfryd, Manston, Bryn Hyfryd, all these little sort of they're almost like little villages that make up the greater Swansea area. My whole life was built around playing football and going to chapel. Music was very much a big part of our household. So my grandmother, and it sounds like a cliche, but she was 4 foot tall, 5 foot wide. Her name was Mavanwi, and she played the little pampamodi. And she lived up to it. She was Mavanwi. She used to play the Pampalmunium in our little gospel hall, but she also was a wonderful pianist. And of course, when you're a kid and your grandparents tell you things, you just sort of laugh. But when I've seen her certificates, now she's got all these letters up. She could play anything. She could absolutely play Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, all these pieces, and we took it completely for granted. But we had a piano in the house. My brother was about 7 years older than me. He went away on a holiday to Spain, came back with a Spanish guitar, and I didn't exactly nick it, but I learned how to play it I started learning when I was about 7. And I listened to all his records, so they were like Simon and Garfunkel, Cat Stevens, all the sort of singer-songwriters, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and I started writing my own songs. And it was strange because one of my brother's friends, a guy called Mike Nicholson, sadly no longer with us. His parents used to run the youth club on a Friday and Sunday night in a little gospel hall. And they used to put me on a chair in the middle of the room, from the ages of 10, 11 onwards, and play your new songs, Mal. Maldwin, as they used to call me. I became Mal a lot later. And I'd play the songs. And he said to me one day, he said, you should these songs to John Peel on Radio 1. And I had not heard of John Peel because his show started at 10 o'clock, which was past my bedtime. It really was. So I borrowed my dad's tape recorder. I recorded the songs, just a little reel-to-reel, little Philips tape recorder, reel-to-reel, and I sent it off. And I must admit, I'd sent off tapes to other people by then, Cliff Richard, Opportunity Knocks, and it hadn't really worked out. In fact, my first audition, I was 11 years old. I went to HTV Wales, and I got a lovely letter back saying, maybe you should try some guitar lessons.
Well, you just mentioned a few things there, Mal. Sorry to sort of talk over it. Cliff Richard, he came into your life further down the line, and you mentioned HTV Wales. That came into your life further down the line as well. So, John Peel.
There are no straight lines. And there's no point in holding a grudge either. You got to move on. Cliff didn't respond to those tapes. I mean, he must have had hundreds.
His loss.
I did an Opportunity Knocks audition when I was 12, and I didn't get asked back. But I wasn't doing, Mama, he's making eyes at me. Nothing wrong with that. But that was the type of show that they were doing, and I was writing my own introverted songs, and I don't think they quite understood. But John Peel did. John Peel and his producer, they got it. Put it on.
Well, I think you tell me. I think you were one of the youngest, weren't you? That when you visited John Peel, this is when it all begins, because your life began to change. You got onto his show, and then weren't you one of the youngest that were?
I was the youngest ever on the John Peel show, which is not surprising, really, because I've got a recording of him saying his partner, his wife, was called the Pig. And he said, and he had a very boring voice. He said, and then the Pig brought me in a tape, and she said, a singer-songwriter. And he says, what, another one? And she said, yes, and he's only 12.
My God.
It sounded horrific. But he played them, and he was pleasantly surprised. And he was incredibly encouraging, particularly on his radio program. I mean, he built it up and said it made his 1973 just a little bit better. And then a couple of record companies, they wanted me to make records. John Peel and his producer, John Walters, wanted me to make records. Amazing. So there were a couple of record companies interested.
I know what you're going to say.
One which they said, one was a bit fly-by-night, as they said. A bit fly-by-night.
This is Virgin, isn't it?
They're called Virgin. Whatever happened to them? And they knew Elton pretty well because he was doing some radio programs with the producer John Walters. Yeah. And they said he's a good guy. And of course, because of my chapel background, my parents were terrified. They were terrified. Not that they didn't encourage me, but they didn't discourage me. They weren't showbiz parents. And so the reason I signed to Rocket Records, apart from that endorsement, was that the guy who signed me, a guy called Steve Brown, his dad had been a major in the Salvation Army.
Oh, right.
So that was sort of a seal of approval. Yeah.
Well, listen, that led you into the world of Elton John, didn't it? I think you were one of the first, as you just quite rightly said, to sign for the Rocket Record Company. Was that right?
Yeah, it just started.
And then, my God, quite a special relationship with Elton, because I think you moved up to London. You spent a lot of time, didn't you, at his home and playing football games with him and Subbuteo and everything else?
Yeah, it's interesting because I suppose my memories get compressed. So my parents were both teachers. My dad's headmaster. So they didn't really want me to miss school. So most of my trips were in half-term holidays, school holidays. But they were just incredibly kind and generous. So, I got to the studio on the first day. It was in October, so it was half-term holidays. There's a telegram waiting from Elton John, and he's on tour in America at the time. She says, "You got my name wrong. You called me Madwin rather than Madwin." He said, "Just, best of luck. Love Elton." And these sessions. So they wanted me to. They didn't want me to be like the Osmonds. I mean, I love the Osmonds, and I actually, I actually got to work with Merrill Osmond quite closely for a time. But they wanted me to play my own guitar, play my own piano, and I was sort of okay. But with the piano, it was a bit more difficult keeping time. They got a good bass player, a good drummer, and so they had to get a piano player. And I didn't mind. It was nice. This guy called Nicky turned up. My dad, who was my chaperone at the time, thought he needs a good meal. He went out and bought him a hamburger. And his name was Nicky Hopkins. And he'd just come off tour with the Rolling Stones, and he played on all their albums. But to me, he was just this skinny kid called Nicky, who played the piano. I was mixing with musicians like that right from the very beginning.
It's a life-changing to say the least. But a young lad in London with these huge sort of names, what must have been going through your head at that time, Mal?
It would have been bizarre, if it was happening now. As a kid, so I'd be in school one day, and then I'd be in London. The first 3 or 4 months were just spectacular, because I'd be going back and forth. I remember first time I met Elton, he had just come off tour from the biggest tour of the States, 48 cities, coast to coast. He flew in, came straight into the offices. I'd been recording. My dad again had been there. And I must have been precocious as a kid, but he was my idol, and I didn't really know what to say. So I got his autograph, and thank goodness my dad, who always used to embarrass me by talking to everybody throughout our trips to London, he just talked to Elton about gardening for like half an hour or so, about roses and about all this type of stuff. And then we had to go back to Swansea. We both had school in the morning, me and my dad. So we're going to get a cab, and Elton says, "Oh, take the rolls." So we're in the back of this Phantom 5 Rolls Royce, me and my dad heading to Paddington Station, and I've got it all written down because I kept the diary. I've got all the. So he's saying, he said, had a gay old time with Elton and the others. Rolls to Paddington. Lovely chat with a nun on the way home to Newport. And that was my dad. So one minute he was talking to Elton John, next minute he was talking to a nun on the train. So that was my dad, and I've sort of become my dad,
Well, it must have been a fantastic experience working with the likes of Elton John and John Peel and how long did that go on for? Because I know eventually it all came crashing down and off you went to Cambridge University. But how much time did you have with Elton and these rock stars in London?
So there were 3 different periods, really. It lasted over 6 years. So the first period was working with a guy called Dave Costa. We recorded the album. My parents didn't want me to take time off school, so they said, "Can we do it in the summer holidays? Release the album." Released a single. The single did okay. We were going to release the album, and in the meantime, my voice broke.
Yeah.
So that album was shelved. And then Gus Dudgeon. Now, Gus Dudgeon is one of these names that people maybe have heard of, but he produced Space Oddity. He produced David Bowie's Space. He produced Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, all of the big Elton John albums, Your Song, all these albums. He was the director of Rocket, and he sort of took over my career for a whole period of time. So that was incredible, because I was working with most of the Elton John band. Davy Johnson, the big blonde-haired lad who plays guitar. Roger Pope, who was in the band after Nigel Olsson. The keyboard player. I remember I had a song called Nothing I Say Comes Out Right. So I played it on the piano for him, because we didn't have anything written out. I'd play the songs, they'd learn the songs, we'd make it up. I said, in my mind, it sounds a bit like that Jimmy Helms song, "Gonna make you an offer you can refuse." I said, "Do you know it?" He said, "Do I know it?" He said, "I played the piano and did all the arrangements." So they were that. I mean, he went on to work with Freddie Mercury and did Barcelona and all those type of things. So those were the quality. I mean, the string arrangements, brass arrangements were done by a guy called Richard Hewson, who arranged The Long and Winding Road for the Beatles. The backing vocals were a band called First Class. I mean, it was just magical. I fell asleep one night because I was a kid. I was 14 by then, but not that they didn't make allowances. But I used to stay at Gus's house. We used to come in a stretch limo every day, but we'd work long hours. And we had to stay late one night because there were some tapes coming in from America. And I fell asleep, and it was the tapes from Madison Square Garden. with Elton performing with John Lennon.
And you're sleeping.
I'm asleep at the back of the studio. I'm 14 years old, but I was there. And then Elton was great, so, I can ball for Wales in these, and so tell me when to stop. But so when I was 13, 14, I used to go and stay at his house. He was brilliant. There was, we've heard so many stories. Didn't
he sort of chaperone you around and getting people to sign your autograph book at these parties?
He couldn't. He was like a big brother. He didn't have any brothers and sisters, and I became the record company mascot. So the Christmas party, he's at the Hammersmith Odeon. We rush off. My brother and I rush off to the party in Covent Garden. He gets there. I mean, it's bizarre because I recognised the barman at this party. I think it was Graham Chapman who was at Monty Python. He was the barman. Walked in, this cat's nest with his hat on. I think he was probably smoking a cigar. And then everybody arrives. Elton arrives, and he said, "Have you got your autograph book?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Come on." And I met everybody. He woke up Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, who was asleep on a big cushion. Brian Ferry. Brian Eno terrified me because he was wild hair. And then I got Ringo Starr's autograph.
Oh my God.
So it was at the State House, beat him at Subbuteo football, went training with Watford.
I read that. He took you to Watford to play football, and apparently you had a blast, great day there. But didn't he sort of have some sort of competition with you where he beat you at bar football, but then you beat him at Subbuteo?
Subbuteo football. Yeah, and it's like, if you've ever seen the film, Rocket Man, his stepfather, his name is Fred, but he called him Durf. We used to call him Durf. Yeah. And he built him a Subbuteo, stadium, a Watford stadium. I mean, he had a playroom. I mean, I was 13. What is he? 8 years older than me? No, he's maybe a bit older. But he was early 20s. He was a multi-millionaire, driving around in a Rolls Royce, and he had a playroom, pinball machines. I was pretty good at Subbuteo because we played a lot of Subbuteo at home in Bryn Hyfryd. He was very good at bar football. Are
you still in touch? I know he's not been well recently. He's got problems with his eyesight, etc. Yeah. But do you still keep in touch with Elton?
I do. I mean, we don't. He doesn't come to Swansea as often as he used to.
No.
No, but he's given me all my tapes back, all of my copyrights, all of my tapes back. He's not going to miss them. Okay, he's doing fine. But it's something that in the music business people don't do, give things back, and he did. And so
he's on the Christmas card list then, Mal.
Well, he's brilliant, and so I sent him a CD of some new stuff, and I got this. I was telling my this is how bizarre sometimes life can be. I'm taking my granddaughter to school. I come back, and there's a little card through the letterbox, and so I open the card, and it says, "I've got the new CD. Sounds great." And then he starts talking about the kids. I'm thinking, who's got a kid called Zach? I'm thinking maybe this is something to do with my children, And then I go, oh. It's a Cartier card with a gold crocodile at the top. And it's Elton. And he didn't need to do it. I'd sent it one day. It was like 3 days later I had this handwritten card.
Nice.
He's a good man, and he's raised so much money for charities. Yeah. I mean, the fact that he's alive is a miracle. Because I remember what it was like in those wild days. But, for example, they would make things special. Going to train with Watford, that was a great day out, staying at the house in Windsor and all of that sort of thing. But, he got me tickets to the FA Cup final, and I stayed the weekend. That was before we went recording at Abbey Road. I walked into Abbey Road. So I'd been in school all week, right? The weekend before, I'd been to the FA Cup final, stayed at the mansion in Windsor. I go back to school. Friday morning, I get the train to London. I go to Paddington Station and go to Abbey Road. I walk in. Elton's at the piano. It's a Friday afternoon. Next to him is Brian Moore from On the Ball. On the other side of him is Eric Morecambe. They were making a charity record called The Gold Diggers Song. And so, obviously, Eric Morecambe, I knew both of them very well. And Elton says, Maldwin, this is Maldwin. He could never call me Maldwin.
Maldwin.
He used to call me Blodwin Pig, because of a band. He said, Maldwin, this is Brian Moore. I said, and he said, this is Eric Morecambe. And Eric was great. He said, so where are you from, boy? And I said, I'm from Swansea. He said, me and Ernie did our first gig together at the Swansea Empire. So there's that, right? At this stage, I'm about 16. And then I have to go and record with an orchestra with Elton John.
And you're only 16. Well, listen, my God, we could talk all day about Elton John.
I'm sorry.
No, please don't apologise. They're amazing stories. But it all came to an end, and you ended up in Cambridge University, and it was during that time where I think you were looking to even pursue potentially a career in theology, but a very famous person persuaded you otherwise, didn't it?
Yeah, well, it's odd, really. I didn't want to go to Cambridge University, which sounds daft. My parents are teachers. I wanted to go to London and become a musician.
Of course.
But Elton and John Reid, because John Reid was Elton's manager at the time, he was also my manager. He said, look, go to university. You can still come back and forth to London. So I went to Cambridge, and after a year of doing economics, I thought, I'm not enjoying this. And because of my background in a little gospel hall, I thought I knew the Bible inside out. So I went to my director of studies and I think I'm going to change in, maybe do theology. And he said, well, actually, there's a boy from your old school here. He's a fellow at the college. You go and have a chat with him. So I did. He was at Westcott House, I think it was called, which was associated with our college in Cambridge. So went round. He made me tea and biscuits. For 20 minutes, I told him why I thought I ought to do theology. And he looked at you, big bushy eyebrows. He looked at me and said, Mel, it's not for you. It was Dr. Rowan Williams who became the Archbishop of Canterbury. He saw through me. He saw through me, Lawrence. He saw through me at an early age.
I think he gave you great advice because otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation today, I don't think.
I have to say he's been brilliant ever since. He's kept in touch, and we've done a lot of stuff together. Me and the Archbishop. So there you go.
Well, listen, the list goes on, but I don't know. You always find a way back, don't you? We talk about no straight lines. I keep mentioning this road with plenty of turns in it. So where did you go from back into music from there? Was it more?
Yeah, it was interesting because Rocket Record was a great idea, and it's sort of not a hippie idea, but people kept on leaving.
Punk come along or something and disrupt your whole thought.
So for me, as I was a singer-songwriter, very much in sort of like Elton, West Coast sort of area, and then punk came along and destroyed my career. And it's sort of heartbreaking because suddenly you go from being, making records. Having said that, the thing ended with Rocket, and I was taken by a manager to work with Harvey Goldsmith, the biggest rock promoter at the time. His only other managerial clients were Van Morrison and Billy Connolly. And so I signed this publishing deal with EMI, and it was going to be great. And then punk came along. So back in Cardiff, I needed, I was going to get married, so I needed to have some steady money. There was no sort of real open doors in London at that stage, even with Harvey as my manager. So I came back, and then I got involved with another act that Harvey took on called After the Fire. I'd known them for a long time, and they'd had a big hit record by surprise in America, but in the meantime, they'd fallen out. So I'd started working with the lead singer of that. So we were going to make the first CD for Sony CBS in Britain. And it cost a fortune, these, fantastic, recording studios in the country, Ridge Farm and stuff. And again, it didn't quite work out. And the act was shelved, and I'm back in Wales still working on a radio programme.
So what's next?
What's next? Well, I kept... Can't keep a good man down. Well, that's the whole thing. There aren't any straight lines. I know that's the name of this, but it's like, well, so what do? I got with Mario Macronelli, Enzo Macronelli's dad. I wrote a musical about a boxer called Tommy Farr, and he said, we all take a punch. You put your elbow on the ropes, you count to 8, and then you get up. And I thought, I've been doing that all my life. Because when you get that punch, when you get the call saying, do you know what? It's not working out. The record's not going to come out, or this time we're going to drop you, or whatever it is. It's heartbreaking, because it's your whole life, and you can be knocked out completely, or that whole thing about taking a knee, and you have to breathe. You have to take some little time to breathe, and then you have to get back in the fight. So I was working on a TV show with a guy called Chris Stewart, a lovely lad, and a guy called Larry Page. Larry Page, not the one from Google. Larry Page, the Teenage Rage. He was Welsh originally, and he became a big entrepreneur in the music business. He signed the Kinks and the Trogs. He had a female artist from Wales. She came down to do the TV show. I sent him some songs, and he became my manager. So he got me some recording. I remember telling my parents, the good news is I'm going to become a dad. The bad news is I'm going to leave the BBC and become a musician. I mean, fair play to...
Was it the head in the hands moment?
They thought I'd got rid of all that. And not my poor wife, but she accepted it as well. And so it was bouncing back and forth then between doing all that stuff. And then one of the songs got picked up for song. I didn't enter the Song for Europe, but a song got picked up for the Song for Europe. We got through the final. I always say, in the changing rooms beforehand, I think there's 17 million people. There's Terry Wogan. I'm either going to sing this song every night for the rest of my life, or I'm never going to sing it again. And we came last. I never sang it again. But that led to broadcasting, led to me becoming a presenter, and then, you know, from radio to TV. And then I brought all the music things back in. So I do a TV show where I play with people like from Cliff. By this stage, Cliff had recorded some of my songs, the Bee Gees. I mean, all these great people who came down to Wales to...
This is the Mal Pope show now on HTV, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's going great. Lawrence, it's going great. You know, we're getting these fantastic people. And then after the second series, they say, we want to change. We want to change.
Well, when you say you're talking about a regional TV show, you just called them out. Cliff Richard, I've got that right of mine. The Bee Gees, were they there?
They were there, yeah. Interviewed the Bee Gees. Who else? I mean, Paul Young, Go West, Lulu, Sandy Shaw,
huge.
George Melly. They're all sorts of musicians, and it's great if you look online. You can catch them. You know, there are bootleg copies of it online.
And then they pulled the plug on the second series, did they?
Yeah, exactly. And you never see. And in fact, in that little period, I was on radio 5 days a week. I was doing 2 TV series a year. I've got 4 kids, a mortgage, cat and a dog, and within 6 months, both areas of my life had been destroyed. They'd moved on. They'd moved on.
Mal, honestly though, you do throughout your life, and I've known you a long time. You're a fabulous story, and you picked yourself up and taken a different direction, and just got on with it. And one of the fascinating things that I didn't know about you, even in all the conversations we've had, is your affinity and your sort of almost pilgrimage to the Deep South in America, and the parallels between sort of Welsh chapel music, if you like, and gospel music down south around Elvis land, shall we say, Memphis and places like that. So what took you down there, Mal?
Strange, you know. I always say yes if I can to anything, right? And I was asked to do. It was an old producer of mine that was at BBC Radio Wales who wanted to make a series for Radio 4 called The Gospel Train, and he wanted me to present it. So I'd had some success in the gospel market in America, but it was white gospel. Yeah. And obviously I knew a lot about Welsh chapel music, but we were trying to draw the parallels. Well, actually, just to tell the story about gospel music. So we went across, spent a week or so traveling up and down. I've been meeting some incredible old school gospel artists, people like... Ira Tucker Jr. from the Dixie Hummingbirds. They became very famous because they sang backing vocals for Paul Simon. I remember going to his house in Philadelphia, and it must have been a really lovely old house, and it wasn't anymore. It was like a really run-down part of town. I walked in, it was lovely, and in his cabinet he had all these Grammys that he'd won for his gospel achievements. So we did that, and I thought, well, this is fantastic. I'd also gone out to make an album, so we'd gone down to Memphis. We were recording in Nashville, and Nigel Hopkins from Forest Fach and I had a Sunday off, so we went down to Graceland. We thought we will do the Platinum Tour because we'll never be here again. And 6 weeks later, I was back up to make a TV show for HTV Wales. So it's like things lead to things. And
absolutely.
Yeah, the show for HTV meant I wrote a song of the journey. It's called Heaven Sound. So I wrote a song, started off in Wales, and I was singing outside the hardware store where Elvis bought his first guitar in Tupelo, Mississippi. And Miss Pat Raspberry, who's the film person, said, "Mel, you've got a lovely voice." I said, "Thank you, Miss Pat." She said, "Will you come back and judge our Gumtree Elvis Presley Songwriting Festival?" I said, "Of course I will." And you never think it's going to happen. And then I get a ticket in the post, and I'm on a plane to Tupelo, Mississippi. And I went back there like, 3 or 4 years, back and forth, and just built up all these great friendships, including one with the Reverend Samuel Billy Kiles from Memphis, who was the man who invited Martin Luther King to Memphis for the garbage worker strike in '68. Spent the afternoon with him in the Lorraine Motel and covered his body when he passed away. And that was that's touching history. And every time I went there, I'd go to see him, I'd ask him to bless me, I'd probably do a little bit of an interview for a radio program or a TV program, and it was a very special relationship from my part, anyway.
It's amazing. It really is. And as you said, you seem to make things happen. You go, you make a decision to go somewhere or do something, and you meet influential people, and it starts off a whole new chapter, doesn't it, in your story? Yeah. You've worked with some fantastic talent. You've worked with Bonnie Tyler, haven't you? You mentioned, I think it was Art Garfunkel. You've been on tour with so many different people. And then in between all that, you did touch upon it. You also got involved in writing your own musicals. And I think there were 3, maybe 4 in total.
Yeah, I forget myself now. I mean, it's funny, because if there's nothing happening,
You create something.
Well, it's just like I've got time on my hands, because when you're unemployed as a musician or an actor, there's nothing,
know.
The phone doesn't ring, and so we did these, TV shows. We went back and forth. Then people changed to HTV, and that stopped. And then you're thinking, what am I going to do? And I remember walking just down the road here, in 2003, 2004, saying the Welsh revival was this massive religious revival in 1904. Evan Roberts, a 26-year-old ex-miner from Lacher, met God in his bedroom in Lacher every night for 3 months, speaking as a man speaks to another man, and was commissioned to lead a worldwide revival from Lacher, which sounds ridiculous. But it happened from October through 1904. For 18 months, he had the whole of Wales in the palm of his hand. And this revival went all around the world. So I was jealous of the Scots and the Irish, like Braveheart or Riverdance. And I always thought, if you're going to make something about Wales, it would be chapel music. And so I remember walking down the road, and somebody around me said, "What are you working on?" I said, "Oh, I'm writing a musical about the Welsh revival." And they went, "Oh, that's good." And once you said it, once you drew it out loud, you're responsible. But again, it's like, well, so what do you do? I had written a part musical, but this is the first one from scratch. So where do you start? So I went online and got a script writing program, and I just started doing it. And then I went to see the Grand Theatre, and Gary Iles, who was the manager there, said, well, you should speak to a guy called Michael Bogdanov, who very much, as Michael Sheen has done now with his Welsh theatre company, he had a theatre company, Wales, and he was making really good, and he was an Olivia Award-winning director, a great reputation. And I went to see him, and I showed him the script, and I played him a couple of songs, and he went, He said, "Well, I can't do it," because I wanted to do it on the centenary, 2004. We can't do it. No, we could do it in 2005, and we did. And we sold out the Grand, and then we toured around Wales, and then the following year we came back and we sold out the Wales Millennium Centre.
Brilliant! This is Amazing Grace, isn't it? Amazing
Grace about the Welsh revival. The trouble is, they're very expensive when you've got 20 people on stage, and so this guy in America got in touch with me about Amazing Grace, the Welsh revival musical. He said, "Well, I'd be interested in having a chat about it." So, as you do, I always sort of Google people and see where they were. And he was in Minneapolis, and he had a show called Triple Espresso about three boys in a coffee shop. And he'd run for 12 years and made, I can't remember how many $1 million. And I just said, "Oh, by the way, I'm writing a musical about three girls in a coffee shop." And called Cappuccino Girls, because I'd written a song called Cappuccino Girls, which is about my wife and her mates. Yeah. And he said, "Can you come across to Minneapolis?" I went, "Yeah, okay." So, literally 5 days later, I'm in Minneapolis in the middle of winter. It's the coldest I've ever been in my life. And I've got by then I've written an A4 sheet of paper of what the musical might be. So I go spend a bit of time there. We come back, I write it, I go back into a workshop. I take a director who I've been working with, who we go back out, come back again. I'm going to move to Minneapolis. I'd have to check the dates, either 2007 or 2008. I'm going to move out there. We're going to run the show. And then the credit crunch hit, and everybody got cold feet. So it's like, so I've got this musical, and it's the economics of it. If you've got 20 people on stage in a big band, it's expensive. If you've got 5 people on stage and you're using tracks that I've created, it's manageable. It's a manageable budget, and so we did it in Manchester. Got a really good review in Manchester, and then we toured it in Wales, and then I built my own theatre.
In the high street.
No, I get a bit of a cold sweat. What on earth? I keep on betting the house. I don't think I can do it anymore. But it's like, so worked with Coastal Housing. They gave me 4 brand new shop units on Swansea High Street. We converted them into a bar area and a purpose-built theatre, and we ran it for 19 weeks, and sort of changed the atmosphere on the high street for that time, because instead of the usual clientele, they had a lot of very nice ladies coming in, drinking pink cocktails, and it went so well that they decided they actually wanted to turn them into shops, not have a theatre there. So you're back to square one.
I know, but you've had it go. You keep doing these things. You're very creative. You mentioned a line a few minutes ago when you said that the phone doesn't ring. There's no work. I start thinking and creating. But there was a time in your life not that long ago when the phone never stopped ringing. And that was as a result of you doing a party for a very famous Radio 1, Radio 2 DJ, Mr. Simon Mayo. You got to tell us.
So what happened was, so I was doing a lot of TV and radio. Suddenly they all go. I've got a great band. So we decide, well, we've got to try and make some money. So what are we going to do? And it was just at the end of all the social clubs up and down every valley. There was a club. So we started doing them as Mal Pope and the Jacks. And we never rehearsed, but we just chose the songs that we like to play. But after a while, when you do 3 gigs a week, you get very good. You learn how to work that audience because you can't let them sit down. You can't let them get the better of you. You have to be louder. You have to be quicker. You have to be faster. And so I got, we did a party for Joan Collins with David Emmanuel. That we did that in Swansea, and Bonnie sang with us as well. And then I got a call out of the blue from Simon May on Radio 1, who I sort of knew through various circles. And he said, look, it's my 40th birthday party. He said, I could ask a name band to do it, but to be honest, people aren't going to listen. So if I asked like the Beautiful South to come along and do it, they do it, but like people will be talking. He said, could you do that? I said, that's our meet and drink. So we went along to the party and we did our Welsh club set. They're all classic songs. We don't let them sit down. It went bang, 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 bang. You know, Tom Robinson came up and joined us. Who else came up and joined us? I mean, you know, we do those parties. You never know who's going to, you know, one party we did for Linda Lusardi, we had Eddie Large singing, I don't know, Knock on Wood or something. You know, Lionel Blair would be there, you know. And so we were used to these parties, but this one, and I was actually doing a bit of work for HTV at the time. So I was in North Wales and my wife rang. She said, something's gone wrong with the phone. I said, what do you mean? She said, it's not stopped ringing. It's just like it's going to the answer phone all the time. And he'd basically gone on air that Monday morning after his party and said, I've had the band of the century. Forget Bryan Adams. Forget all these other people. He said, for the band of the century, Mal Pope and the Jacks, you should book them for your party. And here's his number.
And he put it out on across the airwaves. Oh my God.
We were in the Sun. We were in the Daily Star, the band, you know, the band. And what I realised was I didn't want to spend the rest of my life playing other people's songs in a covers band.
And you gave it up?
Great. I killed it. I said, boys, I'm really sorry. I don't want to do this. I want to do my own songs. I mean, I could be a multimillionaire, to be honest.
I'm with you, Mal. Though, honestly, I really see through it. Honestly, you're a man who believes in what he wants to do, and sometimes it's not about the money, and that's for sure. In terms of you being a party band, and I've got to throw it out there. Yeah. You and I have worked together on a couple of projects, and you got involved in the White Lady Festival that we had done in Swansea, and there weren't many there in the field that night. It was bloody awful. The weather and the elements were against us, but you blew the roof off Mumbles that night. It was incredible. It was fantastic. So good choice, Simon May.
We loved it. The thing is, we loved playing together. We've been together, a lot of us, since we were teenagers. We just love playing music together. It's fun. It's fun, particularly when there's no real, you know, that pressure on. Because without being immodest, we knew we were good because if you can play the Mardy Workman's Hall on a Saturday night, you know, where the tables are being tipped up and it's like, you know, it's like the Wild West, and you still win at the end. You think, well, you paid your dues, and you know
you've been brilliant. But that night in Swansea, for example, down in Mumbles, we had some brilliant artists on that stage that night. We had the late Mike Peters, who was awesome. Guy you work with a lot, Steve Balsamo, who was with the Stories at the time. Yeah. And then you came on, and I remember before you got on the stage, and I said, well, what are you going to do for us, Mal? Even this in advance of the event. You said, we're going to party. We're going to rock. We're going to make the castle rock. Oh my God, you did make it rock that night. It was fantastic, incredible stuff. So listen, what's next then, Mal? What are you working on now? I know you've obviously in the middle of this latest song, Moving On, which we covered at the outset, but what else is ahead for Mal Pope?
What's out? Well, it's actually keeps on. I mean, we've been through a really tragic part of our lives as Mal Pope and the Jacks. Andy Walcoughlin has been my friend and bass player since we were in school together. He's always been just there. He's always been just there beside me. He was there for our big gig at the Arena. Sadly, he passed away just before Christmas. And it's been a real life moment because not only with my closest friends, he was part of whatever this thing is. And it's been hard to think what to do next. We recorded this record. He plays on this current record, Moving On. I'm going to run out of songs that he's played on soon. So I'm not quite sure where the road will lead, and I've had to step back and speak to people that knew Wall as well as I did, and they said the last thing he'd want us to do is for us to stop doing what we love, because he loved it so much. So this record was part of that cathartic moment to start again, I haven't done anything since the big party we had in October at the arena.
Yeah.
To start planning and trying to figure a way out. So we've still got quite a lot of stuff in the can that we will, with this, the way the world is, you have to be consistent. There's no point in really putting 12 songs out on an album. It's probably better to do one song a month, so you keep this algorithm ticking over. And still believe that there's more to come.
Well, listen, I'm not just saying it for any effect. As I said, you're one of the loveliest people that's ever walked into my life. Your work is creative, it's inspirational, and you just keep coming up with this stuff. Whether it's working with big names like Elton John or John Peel, or doing your own stuff around the musicals, running your own TV shows, broadcasting, just being a party band. But do you know what? I think, and probably the biggest compliment I can give you is that you're Mal Pope. And when you mention Mal Pope, you're a lovely guy, and you're a massive part of Swansea and Welsh musical legacy. And
well, thank you.
And keep creating, keep doing the great stuff, Mal, and keep us up to date with what comes next.
I will do, and all the best with the podcast as well. Sounds great, because there are no straight lines.
Mal, thanks for coming on the show. There definitely isn't any straight lines. There aren't any straight lines, and I hope the road ahead for you is a great road, and more straight than curved. But if there are any sort of curves on that journey, then let's hope there's something really, really, really positive and good on the other side of the corner, shall we say. Mal, have a great day. Have a great weekend.
God bless you.
Thanks again for joining us on No Straight Lines.